A werewolf shifter romance audiobook, written by Katherine Stewart, prologue. I was born into it, a prisoner of daylight, my humanity stolen with each dawn. They called me a monster. They weren't wrong. I'd given up hope, given up on life. But then, a quiet click echoed through the ancient pines. A camera shutter. It was the sound that shattered my world, and somehow saved it. What would you do if the only light in your eternal night arrived with a lens, not a scream? Would you embrace it or destroy it? The first shard of dawn light sliced through the ancient pines, then through Caelan's window. It pierced his eyelids, sharp as a hunter's arrow. His breath hitched, a silent gasp. No matter how hard he tried, the terror of morning always clamped down, cold and suffocating. His body, still gloriously human in the pre-dawn gloom, already thrummed with a grotesque anticipation. Every muscle twitched. His bones ached. This wasn't merely discomfort. It was the raw, tearing prelude to transformation, a biological betrayal that started deep within his marrow. He was a ticking clock. A guttural groan ripped from his throat, quickly stifled. He swung his legs over the edge of the bed, the rough wool of his blanket scratching his skin. His movements were practiced, grim. He padded across the cold stone floor, each step heavy with weary resignation. He passed a tarnished silver mirror. His reflection, scarred and brooding, met his gaze. Those eyes. They held the weight of centuries of solitude. He was an alpha, yes, powerful and untamed. But the curse tethered him. It made him a monster when the sun commanded it. This was his truth. He truly believed he was broken, unworthy of softness, unworthy of human connection. Why? Because the very light that sustained life ripped his humanity away, leaving only a savage beast. It was a truth burned into his very soul. He reached the hidden chamber. Its massive, reinforced door, scarred with countless impacts, stood a stark monument to his daily torment. He traced a claw mark etched deep in the thick timber, his own work from a particularly brutal shift. The smell of stale dust and contained fury always clung to this place. He twisted the heavy iron lever, the groan of ancient mechanisms echoing in the quiet. This was his prison. More importantly, it was his cage, keeping the monster in. Not for his sake, but for the unsuspecting world beyond these ancient walls. He stepped inside, the air heavy and cold. The door clanged shut behind him. Darkness, thick and absolute, swallowed him whole. Only then did he allow the agony to truly begin. His skin tightened, muscles spasmed. His roar started as a tremor, deep in his chest, then clawed its way out, desperate and animalistic. It was a sound that tore through the very fabric of the estate, a primal scream of a powerful being undone by fate. What followed was the wrenching snap of bone, the tearing of flesh, the sudden, impossible growth of fur. The chamber trembled. Just like that, his humanity fled, leaving behind only the heavy breathing of the beast. Come morning, the beast reigned. The silence in the stone chamber shattered, replaced by the primal thrum of power. Caelan, now a massive black wolf, burst from the reinforced door, the hinges groaning in protest. He shook his enormous head, ears swiveling, nostrils flaring. The scents of pine, damp earth, and distant prey filled his senses. The sun, once his tormentor, now empowered him, flooding his muscles with savage strength. His fur, thick and obsidian, rippled as he moved with a fluid, predatory grace through the ancient forest. He was the savage of Sunwood, a legend, a fear whispered among distant human settlements. He was all animal instinct and territorial imperative. Yet, even so, a flicker of melancholy haunted his golden eyes. He was free to roam, yes, but free only in this form. He patrolled the outer perimeter of his vast territory, a wild dominion nestled deep within the Sunwood Mountains. Every sniff of the wind, every rustle of leaves was meticulously processed. He moved like a shadow, his powerful paws barely disturbing the forest floor. He paused at a gnarled oak, scraping his claws deep into its bark, leaving his scent, a silent warning to any who dared trespass. This land was his. It was his sanctuary because it was his prison. It was where he hid. He hunted a lone stag, its panicked scent a thrill. The kill was swift, brutal, and necessary. It was the only way to sustain himself in this form, because the beast demanded sustenance. Later, he stood on a high ridge overlooking a sweeping valley, dense with untouched wilderness. The afternoon sun beat down, warm on his fur. He was king here. He was alone here. He observed the natural defenses, the sheer rock faces, the treacherous ravines, the dense, impassable thickets. They were barriers not just for his protection, but for the world's. He watched a hawk circling above, a tiny speck against the vast blue. He envied its boundless freedom. He yearned for something he couldn't name, a connection that his curse forbade. Why? Because he truly believed no human could ever accept the beast within. As he surveyed the sprawling landscape, a faint, almost imperceptible disturbance on the distant horizon caught his keen attention. A subtle shimmer, an unnatural shift in the light, unlike anything natural in the wilderness. It was barely there, like heat rising from pavement on a summer day. But here, in the cool, dense forest, it was wrong. He dismissed it. A trick of the light, perhaps a lone animal, a deer caught in a sunbeam. But then, a primal unease settled deep in his gut. It was a sensation he hadn't felt in decades. He had no way of knowing it was a camera, or the renegade human who wielded it. That night, as dusk bled into twilight, Caelan felt the familiar, painful pull of his reverse transformation. His massive form began to shrink, his bones grinding, his fur receding. He sought out the same hidden chamber, because the shift was still agonizing, but this time an unusual prickle of unease threaded through the pain. It wasn't the usual exhaustion. It was a vague sense of foreignness, a wrongness in the air. When he finally emerged, a man once more, the feeling lingered, a subtle discord in the perfect symphony of his secluded world. His muscles still protested the shift, but his mind was sharp, hyper-alert. He began his nightly checks of the estate's perimeter, a ritual as old as his curse. He moved through the hushed forest, his senses, though dulled from his wolf form, still incredibly acute. He could feel the pulse of the ancient trees, the rustle of tiny creatures. And then he stopped. His boot caught on something, not a root, but a disturbed patch of moss near a hidden spring. It was barely noticeable, almost camouflaged, because the trespasser was clearly skilled. He knelt, his fingers brushing the cool, damp earth. A faint, almost invisible track. Too light for a deer, too small for a bear. Human. Not only that, but hanging in the air, barely perceptible to even his enhanced senses, was a distinct, almost ethereal shimmer. It was residual energy, faint but unmistakable like the ghost of a lightning strike. It hummed with something alien to the forest, something technological. His jaw clenched. Annoyance warred with a colder, predatory wariness. The audacity. Someone had trespassed, not just into his territory, but into the sanctity of his curse, witnessing his monstrous form from afar. He stood slowly, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the tree line. Old stories of hunters who sought creatures like him, who dared to chase alpha bloodlines for their own twisted gains, flashed through his mind. Truth be told, he didn't know what scared him more, the thought of exposure or the unsettling curiosity that gnawed at him. He was annoyed, almost disdainful at the audacity of a trespasser, but also wary, remembering old stories of hunters who sought creatures like him. Because of that, his protective possessiveness surged. "Someone was here," he muttered, his voice a low growl, a guttural rasp that cut through the silence. The forest held its breath. "And they will regret it." He knew it in his bones. This was more than a trespass. This was a violation. His solitude, the fragile piece he'd carved out, was shattered, and he would find the one who shattered it. A scent, human, strong. Caelan, in his massive black wolf form, moved like a shadow through the sun-dappled forest, each muscular contraction silent, lethal. His golden eyes, usually predatory, burned with a cold, almost surgical intent. This was the same faint, strange energy he'd sensed yesterday, now amplified, leading him straight to the trespasser. He followed it towards the roar of a hidden waterfall, because the sound would mask his approach. He was here to end this, swiftly. He burst through a curtain of ferns, the spray from the waterfall misting his dark fur. There she was, a woman. She wasn't screaming. Not yet, anyway. Her back was to him, her fingers busy with some strange, boxy device held to her face. Before she could move, Caelan lunged. It was meant to be a blur, a flash of teeth, a crushing bite, a lethal resolution. But then, as if fate demanded it, she turned. Her eyes met his, not wide with terror, not squeezed shut in horror. Instead, they were magnified by a round glass lens, an unnerving, almost artistic intensity in their depths. And then, a quiet, unsettling click echoed over the rushing water. In that moment, Caelan froze. Every primal instinct screamed kill, yet her gaze held him captive. She didn't flinch. She simply looked. There was no fear, no revulsion, just an odd, intense fascination, a spark of artistic recognition in his monstrous features. It was like she saw past the snarling muzzle, past the razor claws, to something else entirely. Something broken, perhaps. Something beautiful. This wasn't how humans reacted to him. No one had ever looked at him like that. He was momentarily stunned, his animalistic fury overridden by confusion. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Mine. His immediate goal shifted. He didn't want to kill her now. He wanted to understand. He pinned her to the damp earth, not with the intent to rip her apart, but to interrogate her with silent, snarling menace. His heavy paw rested on her chest, pressing, not crushing. His hot breath, thick with the scent of pine and wild game, washed over her face. "What do you see?" he communicated, a primal demand without words, trying to make her show fear, to make her scream. But her gaze remained steady. His life, as he knew it, irrevocably changed in that moment. The trespasser became something else entirely. He dragged her back to his hidden lair, the sheer force of his pull undeniable. Her human scent, foreign and strangely compelling, filled his nostrils. He still didn't understand why he hadn't killed her, but deep down, he knew the truth. He couldn't. He deposited her within the reinforced enclosure he used for particularly volatile shifts. It was built to keep him in. Now, it kept her inside. He stood over her, his immense wolf form dominating the space. He expected screams, pleas, defiance, any of the predictable human reactions. Instead, she sat up. She held her strange camera, not cowering, not weeping. Her unnervingly calm, observant gaze fixed on him. She seemed to study him. From there, she tried to communicate, not with fear in her voice, but with a quiet, rational curiosity. "You're magnificent," she whispered, her voice a soft murmur, utterly at odds with his monstrous presence. She gestured towards his scarred muzzle. "Those markings? Are they from battles? Or something else?" She even attempted to raise her camera again, trying to photograph him through the bars. Not only that, but she reached into a small satchel, pulling out a charcoal stick and a small pad of paper. She began to sketch him, her brow furrowed in concentration. Caelan paced. The small enclosure seemed to vibrate with his suppressed frustration. He needed to break her composure. He needed to make her show fear. He needed to understand this anomaly that saw him not as a monster, but as something worthy of art. He let out a low, challenging growl, a rumble that vibrated through the stone floor and into her very bones. She flinched, yes, but her gaze didn't waver. His sense of control, usually absolute in his domain, was slipping. He felt exposed, challenged in a way he hadn't been in decades. It was as if her gaze penetrated his monstrous facade and saw something he desperately wanted to keep hidden. He'd lived for so long with the misbelief that he was only a monster. Her eyes, however, seemed to call that truth into question. As the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in fiery hues, Caelan felt the familiar, inexorable tug of transformation. The beast's power began to recede, the first agonizing twinges of shifting back to human tearing through him. He retreated from Zora's cage, a raw, primal fear battling his overwhelming curiosity. He couldn't let her see him like that. Not yet. He left her alone in the deepening shadows, the heavy silence a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside him. Zora, now alone in the confinement, heard the low, guttural sounds. The painful snaps and groans of Caelan's reverse transformation echoed from the hidden chamber. The sounds grew louder, more frantic, then slowly subsided. Silence. A beat later, the heavy door groaned open, and then he emerged. It wasn't the beast this time. It was a powerfully built man, raw from the shift. His shoulders were wide, his muscles taut, and ancient, silvery scars crisscrossed his skin, stark against his tanned flesh. His dark hair was disheveled, and his golden eyes, the same compelling golden eyes from the beast, were narrowed with wariness. He was vulnerable, exposed. Zora was the first human to witness this agony and his human form in years. Maybe it was fate that brought her here, because he knew he couldn't have let any other human see him like this. He moved with stiff, almost hesitant movements, his gaze fixed on her. He carried a crude meal, smoked meat and wild berries, the scent of it earthy and rich. He set it down near the bars of her cage. His eyes never left hers, searching, assessing. His tone, when he finally spoke, was gruff, terse. "You're my captive," he stated, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. "Your fate. Undecided." His words were meant to establish dominance. His voice, however, lacked true menace. It held a rough edge, a hint of something weary and ancient. Caelan watched her. He needed to establish control, yes. But he also needed to observe her. He needed to understand her unique abilities without revealing too much of his own vulnerability. He was locked into this conflict now, having a human in his most private space, a secret he'd guarded fiercely for decades. He saw her glance at the scars that marred his body, particularly a large, intricate tattoo woven into his chest, the very mark of his curse. He wondered what she saw there. He wondered if she recognized the ancient symbols. As the silence stretched, Zora ate, her movements slow, deliberate. Caelan watched her from a distance, his gaze analytical. A strange blend of resentment and an undeniable, forbidden fascination swirled within him. He found himself studying the way the firelight caught in her hair, the subtle tremor in her hand as she brought a berry to her lips. She had seen him as a monster. Yet she looked at him now, this scarred man, with the same unsettling curiosity. The night stretched long, filled with unspoken tension, because their forced proximity was igniting something dangerous between them. The first whispers of dawn snaked through the high window of Zora's confinement. Caelan, curled on the hard stone floor, felt the familiar fire begin to bloom beneath his skin. His breath caught, a ragged, choked sound. He'd tried to hide this. He truly had. He'd hoped the darkness would shroud him. But then, a soft click. He knew that sound now. It was her camera. She was watching. His muscles knotted. Bones shifted with agonizing slowness, a symphony of breaking and reforming that always stole his breath. He pressed his face into his forearm, trying to muffle the sounds, the grunts, the animalistic whimpers. Don't look. Don't see this. He felt the burn of her gaze, not as a predator's, but as a lens. A deep, agonizing groan tore from his throat. He morphed, his skin stretching, his body growing. He was a beast, and she was seeing it. Yet, even so, a flicker of something new registered in the periphery of his consciousness. It wasn't just her gaze, it was her focus, her quiet intensity. He sensed a strange reverence, not revulsion. Why? Because no one had ever reacted this way before. It was unnerving. Later that night, the moon hung fat and luminous over the Sunwood peaks. Caelan's human form was a heavy weight after the shift, his body thrumming with residual power. He entered Zora's chamber, more guarded than usual. He expected judgment. He expected a flinch. Instead, she sat on the small, rough cot, her camera resting beside her. Her eyes, those unnervingly calm, artistic eyes, met his. She didn't look away. She didn't scream. She simply observed. You watched, he rasped, his voice rough. He hated the vulnerability in that statement, but he couldn't help it. His chest ached. I did. Her voice, soft as falling snow, brushed over his raw nerves. It was profound, painful, beautiful. She picked up a piece of charcoal, her fingers surprisingly steady. I tried to capture it. She held out a preliminary sketch, a swift, bold outline of his beast form. It was raw, powerful, untamed. But within the fierce lines there was an unexpected underlying beauty, a captured essence he couldn't deny. A subtle shimmer of something ethereal seemed to cling to the charcoal strokes, only visible when he squinted. He stared at it, a flicker of something he hadn't felt in a long, long time stirring within him. Acceptance? A strange, nascent validation? He still couldn't put a name to the emotion, but it was there. Over the next few days, Caelan found himself loosening his rigid control. He begrudgingly allowed Zora more freedom within a confined courtyard just outside his living quarters. He observed her from the shadows because he still needed to assess her true intentions. He saw her setting up her camera, aiming it at the ancient trees, at the play of light and shadow on the moss-covered stones. She'd meticulously document the delicate dance of sunlight through the forest canopy, her face a mask of quiet dedication. He found himself drawn to watch her work. It was like watching a wild deer, beautiful, untamed, utterly unaware of his presence. He saw her resourcefulness, too. One afternoon, she discovered a small fissure in the stone wall, a hidden trickle of fresh, cold water. Instead of crying for help, she patiently fashioned a makeshift cup from a large leaf, channeling the stream to collect it. Later, she found a patch of wild herbs, grinding them with 2 stones to create a fragrant poultice for a small cut she'd gotten. She was resourceful. She was resilient. He felt a grudging admiration, a silent acknowledgement of her strength. Her human scent, initially alien, was starting to weave itself into the fabric of his home. It was unsettling. It was compelling. Meanwhile, a different scent began to prickle at the edges of his senses. Humans. More of them. Closer now. The presence was growing. A defensive urgency pulsed through Caelan's veins. He moved through the estate, checking perimeter defenses, his golden eyes scanning the dense woods. Zora wasn't alone. This wasn't just a simple trespass anymore. Something bigger was coming. Because of that, his protective instincts, usually reserved for his own solitary existence, began to extend to her. He found himself subconsciously positioning himself between her and the direction the scent was coming from. He found Zora staring intently through her camera at a particular ancient stone near the edge of the confined area. It was marked with faint, swirling patterns, almost invisible to the naked eye. "Strange light and patterns," she murmured, her voice a low hum of concentration. "It's like the air around it bends, as if it's breathing magic." He dismissed it, a trick of the light, but he noted her unusual focus. What kind of human could see such things? He needed answers, and he knew deep down that she was the key to them. The scent of blood, human blood, was thick on the wind. Caelan, in his beast form, moved like a dark storm through the trees. He'd found them, a small scouting party, 4 men, cloaked in muted greens, moving with the practiced stealth of hunters. They were too far into his territory. Their scent was acrid with ambition and fear. One of them carried Zora's faint flowery scent on his glove. His eyes blazed. Mine. What followed was a brutal, swift dance of claws and teeth. Caelan lunged, a black blur of fury. The first man barely screamed before his neck snapped. The second stumbled, his rifle clattering to the forest floor as Caelan's weight slammed him down. The third tried to flee. Caelan caught him with effortless speed, a thunderous growl ripping from his throat. He demonstrated his untamed power, his raw, unbridled strength. He was a force of nature. But then, the fourth hunter, younger, faster, broke free. He scrambled over a jagged rock face, disappearing into a narrow crevice Caelan's larger form couldn't follow. A direct threat. He had escaped. That night, back in human form, the familiar ache of the shift was overshadowed by a colder, simmering rage. Caelan confronted Zora, his voice low and dangerous. "The men you brought here," he growled, pacing the small space of her confinement. "Who are they? Why are they looking for you?" He watched her face, searching for a lie, for evasion, but her eyes, though wide with fear, held only desperation. "My brother," she began, her voice trembling. "He owes a brutal man, a loan shark." She wrung her hands. "He sent me. Said I had to get proof. Photographic proof of the Sunwood savage. It was an impossible job. What I have to lose is my life and my brother's." She looked at him, her gaze pleading. "I didn't know it was you." She reached for her camera, holding it up. "And this isn't just any camera." Her fingers traced the rim of the lens. "My grandmother gave it to me. The lenses are ground from lunar quartz." Her voice grew hushed, almost reverent. "They let me see intricate magic." She leaned forward, pressing the camera to the bars, showing him a recent photo. It was the ancient stone she'd been examining. On the screen, the swirling patterns glowed with a faint, otherworldly light. "It's all connected," she insisted, her conviction palpable, her fingers tracing invisible lines of light on the screen. "I just know it." Caelan stared at the photo. He still didn't see the magic with his naked eye, not like she did, but her unwavering conviction, combined with the impossible sight of the glowing patterns on her screen, sparked a flicker of desperate hope. Could her strange ability truly be connected to his curse? It was a wild thought. It was a terrifying thought. And he needed to know more. The air vibrated, not with the buzzing of insects, but with the cold tremor of intrusion. Caelan, already in his wolf form, felt the familiar prickle along his spine intensify. They were here. More of them. The loan shark's hunters, more organized this time. Their scent a foul blend of sweat, cheap metal, and something else, a faint, oily magic he couldn't quite place. He knew they were relentlessly targeting Zora, because her scent was now a beacon in his territory. He found her near the outer lodge, sketching an ancient oak, utterly unaware. A low snarl ripped from his throat, a sound meant to warn, to move. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide. Without warning, he shoved her hard with his muzzle, a silent command to run. He was a blur of black fur, leading her instinctively through hidden paths, through thickets only a wolf could navigate. The forest, once his prison, now became their shield. Sunlight dappled through the dense canopy, making it hard to see, but his senses were sharp. Behind them, shouts echoed, the crack of branches, the sharp metallic tang of bullets whizzing past. Caelan moved like a phantom, engaging in quick, brutal skirmishes. He'd swipe, tear, incapacitate, never stopping, because protecting Zora was his only mission. He used his immense alpha power to track their movements, to deflect their attacks. He'd snap at the air near her, a silent growl meaning, "Faster!" He felt a strange, unsettling intimacy as they faced this danger side by side, forced to rely on each other. Her terrified gasps, her frantic scrambling, fueled a primal fire in his chest. Eventually, he pushed her into a narrow crevice, a temporary sanctuary deep within a cluster of ancient stones. He guarded the opening, his body a trembling wall of fur and muscle, listening as the hunter's shouts grew distant. When he finally turned, Zora collapsed exhausted near an intricately carved stone tablet, her breath ragged. As Caelan checked her, his massive muzzle nudging her gently, his touch almost surprisingly delicate, her camera clattered to the ground. Its lunar quartz lens pointed directly at the tablet. Just like that, a blindingly clear, complex magical diagram flared to life on the screen, pulsing with an inner light Caelan could almost feel. This was something he'd never seen before, yet it felt familiar. Zora, though still trembling, pushed herself up, her gaze fixed on the camera screen, her eyes widened. "This is it," she exclaimed, her voice urgent, raw with a mix of shock and revelation. She scrambled closer to the tablet, tracing the glowing lines with a reverent finger. "My grandmother," she told stories, of an old alpha line, betrayed, cursed. Caelan watched her, his wolf senses overwhelmed by the sheer energy emanating from her camera, from the stone itself. She looked at him, her eyes burning with a desperate intensity. "The curse isn't random, Caelan. It's tied to a stolen blood oath." She pointed to a swirling symbol on the screen, a corrupted version of a pack sigil. "It was woven into the very land, a way to weaken you, to take what's yours." His world tilted. A stolen blood oath? He'd always believed his curse was a divine punishment, a cruel twist of fate for some ancient transgression. To hear it was a weapon, wielded by an enemy. And the loan shark? The one after my brother? Zora's voice dropped, hushed, filled with a new dread. "He's not just a debt collector. He's a rival alpha. He wants your ancestral land. He knows about the curse, Caelan. He caused it. This is a means to keep you exiled, to take everything." A surge of righteous fury, cold and sharp as a winter wind, ripped through Caelan. His very bones vibrated with it. Not just a curse, a weapon, used against him. A profound sense of betrayal washed over him, a bitterness far older than his own memory. His immediate goal shattered. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about reclaiming his birthright, his legacy. It was about breaking the hold of his true enemy. He felt a desperate, burgeoning hope for a life free of this daily torment, a life he had believed impossible. Zora? She was his only hope for understanding this ancient magic. He stared at the glowing, intricate patterns on Zora's camera screen, then at her, his golden eyes wide with a silent question that screamed across the small space. You can see this?" he asked, his voice raw, rough with emotion. The game had changed, and just like that, everything changed. The sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of deep violet and fiery orange. Caelan, still reeling from Zora's revelation, felt the familiar pull of transformation. He moved to his hidden chamber, but this time, the process was different. He didn't want to hide from her. He needed her. Zora followed, her gaze unwavering. As he transformed back to human, the vulnerability of the shift was laid bare. He saw the understanding in her eyes, not judgment. That night, they huddled over the ancient stone tablet. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and magic. Zora held her camera, its lunar quartz lens a beacon in the dim light, illuminating the intricate patterns that danced across the stone. "See?" she whispered, tracing the glowing lines. "It's like a twisted root system. It draws power from the sun, not the moon." She explained how the blood oath was a binding ritual, stolen and perverted. It tethered him to the sun, making him a prisoner of daylight. Caelan, now trusting Zora with his deepest, most agonizing secret, began to share fragmented memories, whispers from his childhood, stories his elders told before they, too, succumbed to the curse or despair. He spoke of an old pack leader, a cunning rival who had envied Sunwood's rich, fertile lands hidden deep within these mountains. They sought dominance, power, he rasped, his voice low. "My ancestor, Alpha Lysander. He trusted too easily. He shared the ritual texts. They twisted them, made a dark oath. It bound my line. He remembered the silence after that, the whispers of savage, the isolation. As he spoke, their unspoken desire became palpable. The air thickened, an electric current passing between them in the dark. Zora's gaze was soft, unwavering, her hand occasionally brushing his as she pointed out a symbol on the screen. He saw not just an ally, but a potential partner, someone who truly saw him for the first time. His desire for her intensified, pushing against his long-held emotional walls. He hadn't truly known love, not like this, because his curse had always kept him apart. Zora, noticing the subtle shift in the constellations, pointed to the sky. "A blood moon is coming," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's rare. It's powerful. It's the only time the veil thins enough to manipulate these ancient oaths." Caelan's gaze shifted from the magic on the screen to Zora's face, illuminated by the camera's soft glow. A powerful realization dawned. The key to his prison might, indeed, be in her hands. The ancient map lay spread across Caelan's rough-hewn table, a landscape of possibilities. Armed with the shattering knowledge of the blood oath and the rival Alpha's true identity, a cold, simmering rage had replaced his usual despair. His hands, scarred from centuries of involuntary shifts, moved with a newfound purpose. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about reclaiming his birthright. His primary goal was to meticulously prepare for the confrontation and the ritual, fueled by a desperate, burning hope for freedom. He traced the outline of his ancestral territory with a grim intensity. "Here," he rumbled, his finger pausing at a cluster of shadowed caves. "The ley lines converge. The magic will be vulnerable there during the blood moon." He pinpointed ancient groves and forgotten springs, places where the ethereal threads of the curse might be manipulated. He was no longer just hiding. He was actively preparing for battle. More importantly, he explicitly involved Zora in the planning. Her unique ability to see the curse's magic wasn't just a curiosity, it was a weapon. "Your eyes, your camera, they're critical," he stated, his voice gruff yet sincere. She was his confidant, his equal. Zora leaned in, her brow furrowed in concentration, her presence a dangerous intimacy that thrilled him. She pointed to a jagged ridge on the map. "They'll try to come from here, won't they? To cut us off from the ritual site." He nodded, surprised by her sharp insight. She wasn't just an artist, she was a strategist. He felt a fierce protectiveness bloom in his chest. A powerful resolve settled over him, tempered only by the immense, terrifying risk involved. He knew, deep down, that this commitment to fighting was also a commitment to her. As they discussed the dangers, Zora's hand drifted to his, her fingers tracing the jagged line of an old scar across his knuckles. Her touch was light, feather-soft, yet it ignited a slow-burning fire beneath his skin. "We'll face it together, Caelan," she whispered, her voice a promise that echoed in the quiet room. For the first time, Caelan allowed himself to truly lean into her touch, a dangerous intimacy taking root. He knew, without a doubt, that he was ready for this. The air crackled. The rival Alpha, like a predator sensing a shift in its prey, escalated their attacks. They sent a larger, more aggressive force, not just scouts, but armed hunters, intent on infiltrating the estate. Their target, the sacred ritual site, the very heart of the curse. Caelan, now operating with calculated precision, a grim focus, moved to meet them. He fought with a seamless grace, a powerful dance of brute strength and ancient knowledge. He was human, but his senses were heightened, his movements lethal. He fought alongside Zora, a seamless unit. She wasn't a warrior, but she moved with him, focusing intently on her camera. "The energy, it's pulsing at the north gate," she'd call out, her voice urgent over the clash of bodies. She became his eyes, seeing the invisible threads of magic that twisted through the trees, guiding him to where the enemy was strongest, where the curse was most vulnerable. He tore through their ranks, a living storm of fury, his only thought to repel the attack and protect her. His heart pounded, not just from the exertion of battle, but from the raw emotion churning inside him. During a lull in the chaos, as they ducked behind a fallen log, their faces inches apart, their breaths mingled in the cool night air. A shared glance, his golden eyes locked with hers, a silent language passing between them. He reached out, his hand brushing her cheek, his thumb gently caressing her skin. "Stay safe," he whispered. The words ripped from him, heavy with a desperate love he hadn't dared to acknowledge until now. Her eyes, wide and luminous, mirrored his own desperate desire. The moment was fleeting. Short, punchy sentences. The hunters were regrouping. They were too many. Caelan felt the strain, but also an undeniable, fierce exhilaration. This extreme pressure forced them to rely on each other completely, transforming their dynamic from allies into deeply connected lovers. Caelan's protective instincts were fully unleashed, affirming his burgeoning love and the lengths he'd go to keep her safe. He knew without a doubt he couldn't imagine a life without her. The cost of this battle was rising, but the cost of not fighting, of losing her, was unbearable. Their hands clasped, a silent promise exchanged amidst the chaos. With the blood moon now a sliver on the horizon, casting an eerie, pale glow through the forest, Caelan and Zora ventured deeper into the sacred parts of the estate. Their goal, to reach a specific, deeply magical location, a nexus of ancient power where the ritual must take place. The air grew thick, humming with unseen energies. It was cold here, even for the mountains, a chill that had nothing to do with the night. As they approached a gnarled circle of megalithic stones, a shimmering barrier nearly invisible flared into existence. Without warning, the ground beneath Caelan buckled. A hidden trap, a magical snare woven from corrupted ley lines designed to amplify his cursed state. He felt the familiar, hateful pull of his body beginning to shift, a painful, uncontrolled transformation triggered by the snare's power. It was meant to make him a rampaging monster, easy to subdue or destroy. But then, Zora acted. Her camera, always at the ready, snapped up. Its lens, the lunar quartz glowing faintly, immediately identified the intricate trap's magical signature. "It's a resonance spell," she cried, her voice urgent. "Disrupt the focal points, the stones at north and south." Her words were a lifeline. Caelan, fighting the beast's uncontrollable surge, slammed his fist into the northern stone. The magic cracked, the snare's hold loosened. He lunged at the southern stone, his body screaming, but his mind focused on Zora's words. The trap dissolved. He narrowly escaped, his skin prickling, his heart pounding like a war drum. This encounter confirmed everything. The rival Alpha knew the curse. They understood its intimate workings. This wasn't just a rival wanting land. It was a calculated, ruthless attack on Caelan's very soul. It forced Caelan to acknowledge the true depth of the danger they faced. This was a fight to the death. Not just for his land, but for his freedom, for his humanity, for Zora. He saw the cold, calculated fury in the rival Alpha's eyes, a distant, mocking gleam as the trap failed. As the blood moon began to rise in the sky, painting the mountains in an unsettling crimson glow, Caelan looked at Zora. A grim, determined fire burned in his eyes. He knew there was no turning back now. "Tonight," he vowed, his voice a low, fierce growl, "this ends." The stakes were clear: freedom or eternal damnation. The stage was set for their final, desperate gamble. The air thrummed with a sick, twisting magic. Caelan, in his human form, felt the familiar pull of the approaching blood moon, but it was overshadowed by a chilling sense of dread. He and Zora were at the ancient spring, a critical pre-ritual step, gathering rare, glowing moon-petal flowers. He reached for a shimmering bloom, its petals almost translucent. But then, a shadow fell. Without warning, the forest erupted. The rival Alpha's forces, far larger than any previous attack, swarmed from the tree line. Their faces were twisted with a triumphant malice. This wasn't just an ambush, it was a trap, a cruel, calculated maneuver. Caelan roared, a primal sound of defiance, shifting instantly to his monstrous wolf form. He lunged, a blur of black fur and snapping teeth. He fought with everything he had. Primal instinct, alpha strength, the desperate need to protect Zora. He tore through the ranks of hunters, each strike meant to incapacitate, to kill. He was a storm. But the enemy was prepared. Woven among their ranks were figures Caelan hadn't seen before. Cloaked figures, their hands crackling with dark magic. They weren't just hunters. They were mages. They launched iridescent nets woven with anti-shifter spells, disrupting Caelan's movements, forcing him back. A blinding flash of purple light. A sickening crack. Zora cried out. She crumpled, clutching her camera, which lay shattered on the damp earth. Its lunar quartz lens, his only hope, cracked, sparking with fading magic. Caelan lunged towards her, ignoring the painful spells searing his fur. He reached her, pushing her behind a fallen log, his beast eyes wide with horror. His plan, his meticulously laid strategy, had backfired spectacularly. He was overwhelmed. The sheer force of the enemy, combined with the vile magical interference, proved too much. He failed. He watched as the rival Alpha, a towering figure emerging from the shadows, looked down at Zora, a cruel, satisfied smirk twisting his lips. His taunting laughter echoed through the trees, a sound like grinding stone as they retreated into the encroaching gloom, leaving behind a scene of wreckage and despair. Caelan cradled Zora, feeling her fading strength, the weight of his curse heavier than ever. He dragged them both through the deepening twilight, every muscle screaming in protest, Zora's limp weight in his arms a leaden reminder of his failure. The air tasted of pine and loss. He found a desperate hiding place, a shallow cave, barely more than a rock overhang hidden by thick, thorny bushes. He laid Zora down on a bed of dry leaves, her breath shallow, her body trembling. Her camera, shattered, lay beside her like a broken dream. As he tended to her, desperately trying to staunch the bleeding from a deep gash on her arm, his mind flooded with memories. Fragments of his past, ugly and raw, clawed their way to the surface. The original trauma of the curse, the betrayal that stole his birthright, the faces of his family, their eyes filled with pity, then fear as his shifts became uncontrollable, the isolation that followed. He saw Zora's current state as direct proof of his inherent monstrousness. He was a curse, a blight, a danger to anyone who dared to get close. This was the dark truth he'd always known, and he had stupidly, recklessly, allowed himself to forget it. His hands shook as he tore a strip of cloth from his own tunic to bind her wound. You should have left," he rasped, his voice rough with self-loathing. His gaze was fixed on the cave wall, unable to look at her, because he couldn't bear to see the consequence of his flaw reflected in her injured face. "I told you what I was. A monster. A danger. You should have listened." He wanted to push her away, to send her back to whatever miserable fate awaited her in the human world, because anything was better than being damned by him. He was not worth it. He was a monster, after all. He felt the weight of all his past failures and miseries collapsing on him. He truly believed he had doomed her. His original internal flaw resurfaced, making him doubt his worthiness of love and his ability to protect. He was a cage for himself, and now he'd dragged her into it. The scent of her blood, mingled with the earthy smell of the cave, filled him with profound guilt. The silence in the cave roared. Caelan sat hunched, staring at the shattered remains of Zora's camera, the broken lunar quartz glinting dully in the faint light. Hope dwindled. His heart was a frozen stone in his chest. His purpose, his renewed fight. It all felt like a foolish dream now, broken just like the lens. Zora stirred. Her breath was raspy, but her eyes, though clouded with pain, were firm. She reached out, her fingers weak but firm, gently pulling his hand to her chest. He felt her heartbeat, a fragile, precious rhythm. And then he felt something else, a faint, growing warmth beneath his palm, a painful effect of her exposure and understanding of the magic. He looked down. There, faint but undeniable, was a mark, an intricate swirling pattern, mirroring the curse's patterns on his own skin, slowly blooming on her chest. His breath caught, his world tilted. No, this was the ultimate betrayal of his hope. She was accepting his curse. I can still do this, she whispered, her voice raspy, barely audible. The tethering. It's not broken. It's different now. She took a shuddering breath. But it means a part of it will always be with me. Caelan stared at the faint, glowing mark on her skin, a terrible, beautiful symbol of her selfless act. He realized the horrifying cost, his freedom, his control, at the expense of her fundamental change. He was faced with the ultimate agonizing choice. Allow her to make this sacrifice and lose a part of her to his curse, her very essence entwined with his damnation? Or condemn them both to continued torment, the beast always lurking, the rival alpha always hunting? The goal seemed impossible. The path ahead was fraught with irreversible consequences. His misbelief that he was a monster, destined for loneliness, was at its peak. He was a poison. He was a curse. The blood moon, a malevolent eye in the bruised sky, began its slow, inevitable ascent, casting an ominous, crimson glow through the mouth of the cave. Its light reflected in Caelan's despairing eyes. He looked at the faint mark on Zora's skin, then at the moon, knowing that a choice must be made, and it would forever alter their lives. His soul ached. The air in the cave was thick with despair, heavy as a funeral shroud. Caelan sat, his world a shattered mosaic of broken hope and Zora's agonizing sacrifice. He stared at the faint, glowing mark on her skin, a testament to his monstrous existence, to his cursed fate. He was a poison, a danger. This was his lowest point. He wanted to give up, to simply let the darkness consume them both. But then, Zora stirred. Her eyes, though still clouded with pain, found his. They held an unwavering gaze, a fire he hadn't seen flicker since his own soul had fractured. "You are not a monster, Caelan," she insisted, her voice soft but firm, cutting through his self-loathing like a surgeon's blade. Her words were a balm, a lifeline. "You are a man, and I see a whole alpha waiting to be free." She reached for his hand, her touch weak but sure, pulling him closer. "The tethering ritual. It can still work," she whispered, her voice raspy, yet filled with impossible conviction. "It's not about breaking the curse entirely. It's about control. My grandmother's texts spoke of it, a symbiotic bond. It allows you to control your shifts, to tame the beast, to become whole." She explained how her exposure to the curse, her unique connection through the lunar quartz, had created a singular opportunity. "It means accepting a mark of my own, a shared burden. But it's a path to your liberation, a true liberation." Her absolute belief in him, her selfless offer to bind herself to his curse, reignited a flicker of desperate, renewed hope within Caelan. A powerful surge of love and gratitude washed over him, a warmth spreading through his frozen heart. His throat tightened. He was in awe of her courage. His deepest internal misbelief, the one that screamed he was unlovable, began to crack under the force of her unwavering faith. He wouldn't let her sacrifice be in vain. His emotional state shifted from despair to a fierce, unwavering determination. This was the turning point. "Then we do this," he managed, his voice raw, his jaw set. He gripped her hand. "Together." A new fire blazed in his eyes. The climb back had begun. With renewed purpose, Caelan and Zora moved through the forest like phantoms. The approaching blood moon, now a bloated crimson orb in the sky, cast long, distorted shadows around them. They worked with a desperate efficiency, gathering the remaining magical components, Moon-petal dew from the highest peak, ancient river stones smooth and humming with forgotten power. They quickly and efficiently set up the ritual site at the nexus of ley lines, the air crackling with building energy. Their movements were synchronized, almost fluid. Caelan, now fully trusting Zora, relied on her photographic sight to guide him to specific energy points. That cluster of crystals. They resonate with the sun's inverse power, she'd say, her voice low, precise. He'd retrieve them, his alpha senses confirming the subtle hum she perceived. Their communication was often unspoken, a shared glance, a touch, a nod. He shared more intimate details of his lineage, of the ancient magic woven into his family's very blood. He spoke of the sacred oaths, the duties of his ancestors, the deep connection they once had to this land. Because of that, their bond deepened further, forged not just in shared danger but in shared trust and ancient lore. His goal was absolute precision. He needed to prepare for the ritual and the impending fight with the rival Alpha. He was focused, driven. A potent mix of anticipation and a profound sense of shared destiny pulsed through him. He felt a deep, abiding love and respect for Zora's courage, for her belief. He knew the enemy was closing in. He could hear their distant movements, the snapping twigs, the hushed commands carried on the wind. As the blood moon reached its zenith, casting an intense crimson glow over the Sunwood Mountains, the rival Alpha's forces appeared on the horizon. They moved fast, a dark tide against the red sky. Caelan and Zora exchanged a look, a silent promise passing between them. This was it. The air thickened, tasting of magic and impending storm. The blood moon hung like a bleeding eye in the sky, its crimson light painting the ancient ritual stones. Caelan positioned himself, Zora at the core of the glowing circle, ready to begin. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her camera, its lunar quartz lens now pulsing with a bright, steady light. "Ready?" she whispered, her gaze fixed on him. "Ready," Caelan growled, his voice a low rumble. He stood tall, his human form radiating raw, untamed power. He watched the rival Alpha's forces surge forward, a wave of dark shapes against the red-tinged landscape. Their leader, the deceitful Alpha, stood at the front, a cruel smirk twisting his lips. Caelan's blood ran cold with fury, but it was a controlled fury, a focused intent. This wasn't just a wild rampage. This was a deliberate, strategic defense. As the enemy closed the distance, Caelan unleashed a powerful, controlled burst of alpha energy. It was like a silent roar, a concussive wave that rippled through the air, knocking the front lines of hunters off their feet. Trees around them swayed, their branches groaning. It was a glimpse of his future control, a demonstration of his newly found conviction. This bought Zora crucial time to initiate the ritual, her hands moving with a fluid grace as she channeled the moon's energy through her camera. The sounds of battle intensified, echoing through the night. The rival Alpha, his eyes burning with outrage, bellowed, "Stop them!" He lunged forward, faster than his minions. Caelan met his gaze, a silent challenge passing between them. He felt the shift begin, a controlled transformation this time. His bones remembered him, but his will was stronger. He wouldn't be a savage this time. He would be the guardian of Sunwood. He would be the Alpha who fought for his freedom, for his mate, for his land. He would fight for them. He met the enemy's charge, his howl piercing the night, a promise of victory. The blood moon, a gigantic, bleeding eye, dominated the night sky. Its crimson light pulsed, painting the ancient ritual stones in an eerie glow. Caelan, now in his fully controlled beast form, stood at the heart of the clearing. He could feel Zora's presence behind him, her hands already moving, channeling the lunar quartz and the raw power of the moon. This was it. Everything. The rival Alpha, a hulking figure of malice, surged forward, his eyes burned with hatred, his fangs bared. He was no longer just a lone shark. He was a twisted reflection of Caelan's past, a living embodiment of the curse's injustice. Caelan met his charge, a low, guttural growl ripping from his throat. This wasn't a fight of pure rage, but a brutal, strategic battle. Caelan used his innate alpha power, honed by centuries of survival, but more importantly, he wielded his newfound understanding of the curse's magic, the knowledge gained from Zora like a weapon. He dodged a wild swing, his claws raking against the rival's flank, severing a key magical conduit the enemy had tried to activate. The rival Alpha roared, a sound of frustrated fury, because his power was being undermined. Caelan shifted his weight, moving with fluid grace, anticipating every move. He wasn't just a savage anymore, he was a master. He bit down, hard, on the rival's shoulder, a calculated strike that sent a jolt of pain, not just physical but magical, through his enemy. The stolen blood oath, still tied to this rival, flared in agony. The rival Alpha screamed. He fell, vanquished, his twisted power dissolving into the earth. Simultaneously, a brilliant flash of light erupted from Zora's position. She completed the ritual, her body arching with the effort, the lunar quartz pulsing with blinding intensity. Caelan felt an immediate, profound shift within his very being. The wild, untamed urge that had governed his transformations for so long simply quieted. It was a choice, a profound control. He was whole. The beast was still a part of him, but it was his beast. And just like that, the curse tethered to her. A faint, glowing mark, intricate and beautiful, appeared on Zora's skin, mirroring the curse's patterns on his own. She collapsed, exhausted from the effort. Caelan, still in his powerful, controlled beast form, felt the wild energy of the ritual settle. He instinctively turned towards her, his heart filled with a triumphant roar that was also a soft cry of gratitude. The rival Alpha lay still, vanquished. The air, heavy with the scent of ozone and spent magic, slowly cleared. Caelan felt the wild energy of the ritual settle within him. The beast was no longer a compulsion, but a choice. He concentrated, and immediately his body rippled. Bones shifted, fur receded, and with a soft groan, he stood in his human form. A profound sense of peace, a liberation he never thought possible, washed over him. He rushed to Zora, his steps light, his touch now devoid of the fear of accidental harm. He scooped her gently into his arms, cradling her tenderly. Her skin was warm, her breath shallow but steady. He examined the faint, intricate mark on her skin, so delicate, yet a tangible symbol of her selfless sacrifice. His thumb brushed over it, a silent promise. You did it," he whispered, his voice raw with emotion, thick with overwhelming gratitude, and a love that swelled in his chest. "You set me free." She stirred, her eyes fluttering open. A soft smile touched her lips. "We did it, Caelan," she murmured, her fingers weakly tracing the contours of his scarred face. They tended to their wounds in the quiet aftermath, the lingering magical residue of the ritual mingling with the fresh scent of pine and rain. Caelan healed her gashes with careful precision, his knowledge of herbs and ancient remedies now applied with a tenderness that spoke volumes. He surveyed the changed landscape, the broken trees, the disturbed earth. It was a scene of wreckage, but also a testament to their victory. This was their new beginning. He felt deeply responsible for her, but also a fierce, protective joy. He knew without a doubt that she was his. Weeks later, the Sunwood Mountains hummed with a different kind of energy. The scars of battle were fading, slowly being reclaimed by the vibrant green of new growth. Caelan and Zora were rebuilding, not just the physical estate, but the very fabric of their existence. Caelan moved freely between his human and wolf forms, a testament to his profound control. He'd shift with the rising sun, no longer a prisoner of daylight, embracing the strength of his beast to work the land. He'd shift back to human under the gentle moonlight, savoring the soft touch of Zora's hand. He embraced his role as Alpha, not as a lonely exile, but as a leader with a partner. He met with the scattered remnants of nearby packs, extending invitations, forming alliances. He told his story, not of a monster, but of a man cursed and saved by love. Zora, his beloved Luna, was always by his side, her camera ever present. She continued to photograph, capturing the essence of their healing land, the thriving wildlife, and the new faces of their burgeoning pack. Her art celebrated their journey. Their relationship blossomed into a profound partnership, filled with passion and shared purpose. Their love story, once whispered as a fearful legend, transformed into a cherished tale of courage, sacrifice, and undeniable connection. He was a savage, the storytellers would say, but she saw the beauty in the beast. Caelan felt a deep, abiding contentment, a true freedom he'd never thought possible. His transformation was complete. Caelan stood with Zora at the peak of Sunwood Mountain, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and purple. His arm was wrapped around her waist, pulling her close. He looked at her, then out at his thriving domain, a deep peace settling in his heart. The faint, intricate mark on Zora's skin glowed subtly in the twilight, a silent, powerful testament to their love. It was a story that would be told for generations. Epilogue. Years passed. Like the ancient Sunwood trees, Caelan and Zora's love deepened its roots, growing stronger with each passing season. The mountains, once a prison, now sang with life. They were pillars of Sunwood, a thriving, peaceful territory that stretched as far as the eye could see. The air always smelled of pine and home. Caelan, now a revered alpha, led with wisdom and strength. He moved effortlessly between his human and wolf forms. The sun, once his tormentor, was now his ally, a source of invigorating power. He'd shift with the dawn, a powerful black wolf, patrolling his lands, his senses acute, his heart full. He'd shift back to human under the gentle moonlight, savoring the warmth of Zora's hand in his. His control was absolute. It was a testament to his unbreakable will, but more importantly, to her profound sacrifice. Zora, his beloved Luna, was always by his side. Her camera, repaired and polished, was never far from her reach. She continued to document their world, the playful romps of new wolf pups, the quiet majesty of ancient trees, the joyous faces of their growing pack. Her art was celebrated throughout the packs. They'd built a life defined by their unwavering love, a love that defied curses and shattered expectations. Their bond was a tapestry woven with shared laughter, quiet understanding, and unspoken promises. The story of the savage of Sunwood, the cursed alpha, was now a cherished legend. It was whispered to cubs by the fireside, a bedtime tale of bravery and acceptance. It was a reminder that the deepest freedom wasn't found by escaping a curse, but by finding it within the heart of another. Caelan often stood at the peak of Sunwood Mountain with Zora, her hand in his. The sun would set in a blaze of orange and purple, painting the sky with fiery strokes. He'd look at her, then out at his thriving domain, a deep, abiding peace settling in his heart. The faint, intricate mark on Zora's skin, a constant, beautiful reminder of their bond, would glow subtly in the twilight. Their love, a legend for all time.